This is the bottom line. Let me especially welcome you to the show. If you are just tuning in, we are live from our studios here at Rage in Accra. We are live on DSTV channel 277, and we are live on Facebook page Chairman Kwesi Efri. Today we'll try as much as possible to pick in messages. Remember, you are not to call. We'll try as much as possible to pick in some messages, and our discussion is on the topic of taxation here in Ghana, and the hue and cry about the new taxes that have been introduced by government, of course, the emission tax, and the other ones which have been virtually rejected by sections of the people in the country. If you want to get into politics, both the opposition and some members of the ruling New Patriotic Party as well have all in unison rejected some of the taxes that have been introduced. So tonight, our discussion is on taxation, and we are happy to have an expert who is also a lawyer in the space. We'll assess the legal ramifications of some of the commentaries that have come. We will assess the depth of taxation and the impact on the economy in general, the macro, micro indicators, and how we'll be able to mitigate the challenges that we face as people within this economy, whether it is good for us to embark or accept these taxes that have been introduced or kick against it. I don't know what you think, but you may want to send in your message. We'll put the WhatsApp number on screen pretty shortly, and you can send in your messages to us. If time permits, we'll try as much as possible to read it. So you want to stick and stay with us tonight. When we come back, I'll introduce to you my guest, Francis Timor Boy Esquire, who is a tax analyst and a member of the Chartered Institute of Taxation. My name is Kwesi Efri, and this is the bottom line. Stay with us. All right, so you welcome back from the break, and this is the bottom line. I've already told you about our topic for tonight, which is on taxation, and I don't know if we have the number on the screen now. If we have our WhatsApp line on the screen now. If we don't have, the producer will put it on pretty shortly, but you can join us. So it's 0241 569 408, 0241 569 408. What do you think about the current spate of taxes? Now, it may interest you to know, I don't know if you've seen the advert around, that the man of economics, His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia will be addressing the entire country, I think on Wednesday, the 7th day of February 2024. So we are all expecting him to be talking, and I'm sure that you are eager to listen to him because in the current economic space, you may want to tag him as the economic man. And so him telling us or the entire country about his manifesto or about what he intends to do when he's given power, we are expecting him to be talking more of economics, how to salvage the economy. We've come out of the ramifications, or we are coming out of one, the banking restructuring in, I think, 2018. We are coming out of COVID in 2019, 2020. We are coming out of Russia-Ukrainian war. And so whether we like it or not, in 2024, we get into the space of politics. But so for those of us who are in business and who talk about the economy, we'll be monitoring them on the sidelines of how they would want to manage the economy. So Wednesday, we'll monitor him on how he would want to manage the economy. And this is a time where a lot of people are talking about taxes. And I would remind you of a few things. I had some slides to put out to you. I don't know if the producer will put this along. In 2017, we had the current government coming into power on the promise of not entirely eradication of taxes, though, but reduction, massive reduction in what they call unnecessary taxes. And we saw them abolish about 17 taxes and introduce about 3 or 4 new taxes, though. In 2018, we saw new taxes. In 2019, we saw new taxes, but they had matched it against high macroeconomic indicator values, an improvement in our macroeconomic indicators, which suggested that the economy was performing very well. In 2020, they come back to tell us that, well, the problems coming out of COVID has affected the entire economy. 2021, same. 2022, they say the economy is rebounding. 2023, they say they are on course. And this fairly or largely is also attributed to the IMF. What do you think is happening in the economy? Are we on the rebound? Just this year, in January, we've heard about the implementation of some of the taxes that were announced in the 2024 budget, which was read last year, of course, by the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta in Parliament. And so tonight, we are only moderators. We are meeting the experts tonight to tell us how the trend has been. And it will be good for all of us because that's how we'll be able to properly situate the performance of the economy, how taxation has been, how production, we'll ask him about production as well, because the promise was move away from taxation, get into more production, and salvage the economy. Have we been able to do that with the 1D, 1F, and so on and so forth? Like I said, we're only moderators. Francis Timor Boy is a tax analyst and a member of the Chartered Institute of Taxation. He's a lawyer, and so you can well situate him in the space of economics and its legal issues and the politics of economics and all around. So it's not that we are going to call politicians in here when I say that we are going to listen to the politicians speak on Wednesday. And of course, we've been following His Excellency Bahama as well. But we'll be doing our private discussions through their political lenses, and you may want to make your own informed choice. Council, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Kwesi, and glad to be here.
We are happy to be having you.
Yeah.
And I know you have some slides to present to us and run all of us along. But let me ask you, in your candid opinion, we have talked about expanding the tax net, which everybody speaks about every day. The current government spoke about it. Previous government spoke about it. Improving productivity, taxing progressively, and all of these issues. We've seen the current government introduce something like the digitization and digitalization, trying to formalize the informal economy and all of that. Are we on course as a country?
So Kwesi, I think that if you look at tax administration, I think we've done pretty okay because we've seen some innovations. Before, you were just doing everything manual with the GRA, but when it comes to how we use systems and technology to drive our administrative system, I think that we've done pretty okay. What I think we have a little problem, or maybe we have a problem, is the way we have blended the direct and indirect taxes. Mm-hmm. And so from 2021, as I will show you, I will only present the legal framework. Of course, Parliament is the body that is responsible for passing the laws. So when they pass them, GRA will just have to implement them, and then we will have to also comply. So from 2017 to date, you realize that most of the taxes that we have passed came in the form of indirect tax, especially from 2021. Mm-hmm. And I think that is what is causing this debate currently in Ghana. And so you look at it and you notice that for the direct taxes, we haven't been too good in that angle. Indeed, if you look at the tax collection from 2012 to date, mm-hmm. you realize that over 60% of our tax collections comes from indirect taxes. Mm-hmm. And we know the way indirect taxes are. They are regressive, and the poor suffers the most. So that is the bit of worry for some of us. And we hope that government would have, balanced some of the taxes. Why
is it the case in our economy?
I think it's over time we were not able to collect enough to meet our needs. And so you read a budget almost every year, and you notice that we have overspent. And either the money goes into borrowing or payment of interest, mm-hmm. or we use it to pay salaries. So there's always a deficit. So when we were hit with COVID, it exposed our public finances, and you realize that we were just so weak to the extent that we couldn't survive. And that is why we saw so much of the indirect taxes coming in. Number one, because they are easy to collect. And again, they provide quick money for you. Unlike direct taxes where sometimes you have to wait till the end of the year, indirect tax, unless you don't buy, go to the malls, you buy, and the money is collected almost every month. So government now started pushing a lot of, the indirect taxes on people. And that is why I think that buy anything and you realize that indirect taxes are too many.
Can we also say it's as a result of our largely informal economy?
Of course, and I think that is what contributes to our inability to focus on the direct taxes.
Exactly.
So the economy is largely informal. You wouldn't find people. How many multinationals do we even have in Ghana? People will be having that small businesses, brick businesses, selling on the street. So at the end of the day, you are unable to apply the tax rules to them. In taxation, the first thing is you identify the taxpayer. Then you assess the person's income to tax. When you assess the person's income, then you collect the money and then you pay it into the consolidated fund. We had a problem of identification. How many businesses have registered? So around 2021, we were told that we're going to replace the Ghana card with the tin. So we're all happy. But that is just one step. After the identification, you need to go ahead and assess them. So the informal economy is really contributing to some of this problem. But the unfortunate thing is that we have rules that are supposed to apply to the informal economy, but yet we don't.
Are we taxing more since 2017? Let me place it from 2017.
I think so.
We are taxing more.
Especially indirect
What
taxes.
has the story been so far?
Like I said, 60% of your taxes coming from indirect taxes. So we have the COVID levy, e-levy, a lot of them.
I'm sure I'd have to allow you to kindly take us through what it's been like from 2017, because everybody was hopeful from, I remember clearly when the Minister of Finance read the budget, I think in March 2017, for the 2017 fiscal year. Everybody was happy. You remember, people were jubilating, even though budget had been read in 2016 for the 2017, because there was a new government. The new government had to read the budget for the year again. And then we had the mid-year budget review. People were still happy. And then towards the end of 2017, and it was so because some taxes had been cancelled.
Yes.
We want to see the trajectory so far. How has it been? And then maybe the legal issues. So please, the platform is yours now.
So Kwesi, you look at first of all, let me focus on income tax. So in 2017 March, government came with some exemptions. For example, investors who traded on the stock exchange, government said that if you sell your shares, you were not going to pay any tax on it. Of course, the impact is that it's going to increase investor, confidence on the stock exchange. So investors were not paying it. Again, people who had invested in, unit trusts and all those things, they were also not, paying taxes on their income. The popular lottery tax was introduced in 2015. Now, in 2015, we amended it to the extent that if you earned above 2,592, you were paying tax on it. When the government came, they repealed it in 2017. We also had PAYE rates, which were maintained at 25%. So at least the maximum tax you could pay was 25%. Then the government also introduced some incentives for young entrepreneurs. And this, energized the young ones. For the first 5 years, if you are into some selected sectors of the economy, like, power production, horticulture, and all those things, you are not paying any tax for the first 5 years. And even after the 5 years, your maximum tax you could pay was around 15%. So all of these things were supposed to boost the economy. So young entrepreneurs were not subject to tax.
But you see one of the problems I have, and sorry to cut you in, is, do I say the publicity of this? Because I know a lot of startups and a lot of young entrepreneurs who couldn't take advantage of this. Either they didn't know, or they just went through the system and nobody told them about it.
I agree with you, and I think that's one of the problems we have with most of our tax policies. Even those that do not benefit us, that we are supposed to pay, in many occasions we are not engaged. So people don't even know what it is. So I agree with you. Many young people did not even know this particular exemption existed.
So it is still in force?
It is still in force.
That's the young entrepreneurs?
Young entrepreneurs. First 5 years, within some selected sectors of the economy, you invest, you do your business, and you don't pay any tax on.
Wow.
And even after the 5 years, when you are located in Accra and Tema, your maximum tax is 15%, as against the traditional 25%. So there's some incentive available for you. And again, we had private investors. Government wanted to encourage private investors. So private investors who were plowing back their profit, like Central University and this, private investors started coming up, many. So those people were having that exemption that if you reinvest all your money in the university in order to expand, they were also not
get on more students, get on more teachers, create more employment,
opening up research centers and all those things. And then excise products, government introduced what we call the excise stamp. When the government introduced it, it says that any equipment that you bring into Ghana, you get that exemption for you to be able to produce. So all of these things in 2017 for direct taxes, we thought that it was going to boost the economy, and indeed it was incentives that are available. Let's look at indirect taxes.
Before you go on, do you have maybe this is any research to show whether it has actually boosted the economy? The impact so far, has it had any impact? All of this, it may or it must have had. But do we have data maybe from the Ghana Statistical Service or anywhere to show that 2017, at least if anybody wanted to do any kind of research, 2017 till 2024 is about 7 years. Yes. It's good enough to carry out a research. Is there any work like that to show that it's impacted the economy?
That's the sad aspect of it. We can talk about excise products, those who use the machines to produce excise products, that they get that accelerated depreciation. But all the other ones, we don't have any data available to say that, for example, young entrepreneurs, how many people took advantage of it and how much did we spend? So that data is not available.
Ghana Statistical Services has done a research on married men who cheat and married women who do not cheat. We want more of this.
And I think it's a very good area for people
to research. Yes.
Exactly. And let's look at the indirect tax for 2017. 2017, maybe if we can go to the next slide.
Yes. So, producer, can you push it for us? Right.
Good. So, indirect tax, government also brought some changes. For example, before, when you were traveling by air, you were paying VAT on it.
Yes.
Government exempted that because they wanted to, boost the domestic airlines. Immovable property for, estate developers. We also saw some exemptions on it. Then the famous, we have scrapped 17 taxes. Financial services was also scrapped. Then the government also introduced what we call the flat rate. The flat rate, what the government brought was, in fact, flat rate was introduced in somewhere 2007. The government came and said that any person who is into retail or wholesale of goods, they were also going to pay just a flat rate of 3%. That was also good for businesses. And then they also introduced some withholding mechanisms to collect, because the notion was that people were not accounting for the taxes for which they've collected. So the government introduced those ones as a means of collecting the taxes. And then National Lottery was also exempted from VAT. So you could notice that a lot of exemptions came in 2017. 2018 was also good. Let's go to the next slide. 2018 was also pretty okay. Now, 2018, we saw, of course, the first one, which we all cried, was the PAY rate. From 25% to 35%.
Band. Yes.
And there was a lot of public, outcry. Later, the government withdrew it.
Yes.
Non-resident persons were also
from 20 to 25.
Exactly. So all of a sudden, people started having issues with this one. So before the year end, government listened, and then they reduced it from 35% to 30%. That was cool for 2017. Let's look at the indirect tax. Sorry, for 2018. Let's look at indirect tax for 2018. Here too, this is where the problem started. See, I think it was a smart way of collecting money.
Raking in more revenue for the GRA.
Exactly. And this one, we've spoken about it, that the government should go back and take a second look at it. The GET Fund and then the Inhale were 2.5 each. Now, it was available for businesses to claim as an input VAT. Now, government in August said that I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to separate them and reduce the VAT rate from 15% to 12.5%. Then this time, the 2.5 get fund and 2.5 NHIL should be a cost to the businesses. As a business, what do? I can only pass it on. So this really disturbed a lot of the production system. The whole idea is that businesses are not consumers. The principle of VAT is that businesses are not consumers. And so if a businessman incurs any VAT-like expenses, he should be allowed to claim it back so that the real value added is passed on to consumers. Now, government did not allow this. And this was where the problem started. The separation of the get fund and then the NHIL from the VAT.
Yes.
That was a problem. And it has remained a problem up to this time. And
even the calculation of it is still a problem.
That is a
because
problem.
Because the 12.5 is added to the total sum before the 2.5 and the 2.5 are calculated on the inclusion of the 12.5.
So that is why we say the VAT is not 15%, but rather currently 21.9%.
That one,
in effect, is 22%. And so I get worried about when people are saying government is introducing VAT on electricity consumption at 15%. No, it is not 15%. Clearly, it's going to be 22%, which means that we should now be talking not just fighting the VAT, but we should be fighting the levies as well. Because you have
this calculation. Now, my problem is how this is passed on, especially to consumers.
There's a problem there because there's a limit you can pass on. If I'm a consumer and I come to your restaurant and I can't buy maybe a full plate any longer, I have to reduce it because you can't pass on everything. There's a limit I can contain. So at the end of the day, you, the businessman, you must also absorb some. Otherwise, you are going to be priced out of the market.
But in Ghana, so I mean, I'm sorry to still be cutting you. The issue of price takers and all of that and those things. You see producers increasing the prices of their products across board at the same time. And so you see zero competition amongst the producers. And if you go to producer A and the price is 10 cedis, you go to producer B, still 10 cedis. You have no choice as a consumer. You still have to buy.
Yes. So in instances where prices are almost the same, that is where you don't have a choice. But where you can, price your own products, and I know some products are just like that, this person will be able to absorb, so his price will be a little bit cheaper. But if you don't have an option, then you have to, pass it on to consumers. That's why we saw price of goods and services increasing like that. But the same on 2018, we saw some exemptions granted to locally manufactured textiles. And I think that was very good because it provided some relief for those entities because they were having that safe competition from the Chinese product. Now let's move to 2019 and look at it. 2019, we saw some changes also. Now the ban was maintained for PAYE employees like you and I, but the reliefs, the personal reliefs, and again, this one too, we must commend government, though it is not enough. When there are some reliefs that are available to individuals. For example, if you are married before, since when we were just getting 200 cedis per year, and 200 cedis per year for a married person, or maybe a child education was too small.
Yes.
So in 2019, we saw government increasing it from 200 to 1,000. I think that was very good. And again, the government automotive, car assembly, they also got some exemption, which is between 3 years to 10 years.
Yes.
On the indirect taxes, government also granted some exemptions for textbooks, importation of paper for textbooks. And then machete were also exempted. The items, the materials that we import for machete were also exempted. But on communication service tax, we saw an increase of almost 50%, 6% to 9%. And that was very, very high. Thankfully, government reversed that decision when COVID came in 2020. So I think that was very good. Let's go to 2020 and then also look at the trajectory. Of course, we can look at its impact in that order.
I will be coming to ask. Well, maybe you may want to add that because I was coming to ask, and I asked initially about how has this impacted, whether there is a research. But from all the points that you have raised, when we are done, you may want to run through what is the outcome, what is the result so far, what is the impact, and whether the areas that are even being taxed, we saw the textbooks, for example, where the taxes are being reduced, whether they are relevant and core to the substance of the economy, which affects generally everybody.
For example, the automotive industry, we granted them exemption. How many people can buy
assemble cars?
Assemble cars. How many people can buy new cars? What is our taste? Because of our level of income, people will normally go for the second-hand used cars. So is it relevant?
And in 2020, I remember government made an attempt to ban the importation of used cars.
Which didn't work.
Because people were forced to buy cars at higher prices and all that.
So sometimes we need to look at the policy implications, whether it's really impacting. And like I like the point that you said that we need to research and see whether it's really generating the impact that we intended.
Right, right.
So in 2020, COVID was around, so government said that people had lost their job. And under the Pensions Act, if you had invested and you are not up to 10 years and you withdraw, you were paying 15%. So government said that because people have lost their job, assuming you have some pension investment somewhere, you can withdraw it and I'm going to grant you that free exemption. So government also, of course, the impact is that it's going to be beneficial to people who had lost their job. In the case of indirect tax, this was also good because government reduced the 9% CST to 5%. And I think that it made, cost of data very cheaper for us. We would have wished that it comes down further. Let's go to 2021.
from the 6 to 9,
exactly.
And now 9 to 5, and we still wanted to come back down.
Yeah, because I think that CST is a special levy.
Yes.
Remember, it is a levy, and so all the VAT and all those things are coming to add up. You see, if you buy today, if you buy every 10 cedi credits, 2 cedis, 20 pesos goes into indirect taxes. You buy 100, 22 cedis goes into indirect taxes. So what is left for you is around 78 cedis, which to some is still high. I mean, I just buy 100 cedis and I'm paying over 20 cedis. That's still high. So with our ways that still it comes down because of the effect of the indirect tax, such as VAT and then the levies.
But do you also think that the telecommunication companies are ripping us off? The CST, for example, is supposed to be accounted for by government and go into specific areas. I know, for example, Youth Employment Agency has a source of funding
20%
coming from, of course, CST. You would have GET Fund and other institutions also benefiting in one way or the other from it. If we see results from there, we see also the telecommunications making huge sums of monies and profit with the ACH that's been set up, for example, now seeing how much are drawn into the... Do you not think that they should also be guided?
I think the industry is very capital intensive. And so sometimes you see the revenue there, but the operations, take for example, a tower is supposed to be 24 hours running. When you are asleep, and especially in villages where they don't have, electricity, or when the power goes off, they are supposed to have these powers, the towers running because you never know who will wake up to browse. In such situations, you realize that if you are not careful, the fixed cost is there, but the revenue is not coming. So in my view, and I think that's why we have that, a lot of the industry is not doing well, some of them not doing well, because you can't cope with the fixed cost. Recently, we saw some data providers like...
I think Selfline is not active anymore.
Exactly, they've gone out of the market because there's a huge fixed cost. The network must be there. What about if the network is there and you don't have the customers? If the network is there and you don't even have electricity cheaper to power it, and therefore you need to go and buy fuel. So the fixed cost sometimes makes it a bit difficult for this. But I believe that still government can do something about that industry and make it more cheaper.
Right.
Again, in 2021, because we were still in the COVID environment, government suspended some of the taxes. Especially for dressmakers, drinking bars, they pay some small amount of tax. I've always been saying that amount of tax is very small, but we saw government suspending it. Then the financial sector cleanup came. Then we are told that they are supposed to pay 5% of their profit before tax, which to me was, another blow to them because they were already paying National Fiscal Stabilization Levy. So that sector alone, they will pay corporate tax of 25%. The financial sector cleanup levy 5%, plus National Fiscal Stabilization Levy, which makes it 35%. On the indirect tax front too, we saw some changes. Now, government said that the flat rate should be limited to 500,000 people people whose turnover is 500,000. This created problem for people like Abosokan people. Because if somebody's turnover is above 500,000 and he's selling pure water or the bottled water, at the end of the day, he will be charging the standard rate plus the levies. But you are charging just 3%. So when I go, he will ask me, do you want VAT invoice or you don't want? If you want invoice, this is the price. If you don't want, this is the price. So at the end of the day, they were fighting among themselves and said, okay, look, put us all onto the flat rate. So I think that this policy still needs to be reviewed, because if you talk to the industry, the traders, they see this as a big problem.
Let me pause you there just a minute, and let me divert a bit.
Sure.
You mentioned, and that question had been, in fact, I've written it down, and you've just taken it out of my mouth, that if you talk to industry players, we've seen a number of times Importers, Exporters Association, Freight Forwarders Association coming up to say that the Minister of Trade did not engage us. The Minister of Finance did not engage us. From your research, from where you sit, and from your engagement, is there enough engagement when these policies are being made, which gets eventually into the budget for implementation, which affects everybody?
Not at all.
It doesn't?
Not at all. Because the engagement, for me, what I've seen is a one way. So what the ministry will do is that they will send a letter out that bring inputs. If you bring the input as to whether it will be taken or not, nobody knows. At the end of the day, we just get to know new taxes are introduced when they are reading the budget. In some countries like UK, the last time in April 2023, when they were going to introduce tax on plastic packaging, they sent it out like a year for industry to debate it. Now, the missing link in our case is that sometimes we think that people will oppose it. But we forget that if we allow the people to make the policy themselves, they buy into it. And it's even brings unintended challenges so that we can address them before we go. Look at e-levy. We were supposed to start January. You know when we started? Somewhere May. So most of the time, we think that we have done the engagement by to come, and then you see that we've not done enough. I would think that not enough engagement is done. Look at the VAT on electricity consumption for the household. Labour said you didn't engage us, so we are not even coming to the table. Maybe we should take some cue from that. And then we have to, advise ourselves when we are coming up with any fiscal policy in future. No engagement is done. Unless the people believe that this tax is okay for us. For example, the COVID levy. 2021, where then the government said, okay, we are coming out with a COVID levy of 1% on goods and services. And in 2024, we are expecting over 4.4 billion. That is very huge. Because of that huge amount of money, 2025, we are expecting about 5.6 billion Ghana cedis. Government is unable to take it out because you need to replace it. So COVID is gone, but we are still paying for it.
At least Ghana Revenue Authority is able to boast of beating, I think, was it this January or December? They had spoken about meeting its targets and even going beyond the target for the fiscal year 2023.
Yeah.
If we take COVID levy out, will we be able to
Not at all.
talk about the same story?
I don't think we can take it out unless we look for a serious revenue line, or unless maybe we go and cut expenditure. It looks like it's going to stay for us. It's going to stay with us for a very long time.
Right.
Let's look at 2020. This is where we started seeing most of the taxes coming in, especially in the form of indirect. Let's go to 2022. Here, government also maintained the PAYE rate, but this time the minimum wage had been introduced. They continued to suspend the quarterly taxes because we're still within the COVID environment. We had not come to. Let's look at indirect taxes for 2022. For indirect taxes, in fact, I like the first one, introduction of upfront VAT. It was proposed by the traders themselves. Government realized that many people were bringing containers and importing, yet they were not charging VAT. So they came up with the policy that, okay, if you have not registered for VAT at the port, you have to pay a fine or a penalty. Then if you come and register, then you can come for the money. And the last time Commissioner General said that it has yielded a lot of revenue for them.
And that's as a result of the engagement you are talking about.
Clearly. So they themselves came out with a policy, and so they could not fight it. And the amount is just a deposit. If you go and pay and you register, you get your money back.
It makes everybody want to register.
Exactly. And then in 2022, too, we saw some expansion of VAT on e-commerce. We had a lot of people doing business in Ghana. For example, Facebook. You advertise on Facebook, and Facebook will charge you. And so government said that they are also doing business in Ghana, and therefore they should also, pay VAT. We saw government introducing some important administrative measure, which is the EVAT, so that government can track people who are issuing VAT and they are not collecting. And we saw, VAT on lottery also going away.
But again, let me cut in. It's the EVAT working. It is working.
It's working, but I think it's going to take us a longer time because it takes technology to do that. It's going to take us. But I think that is a nice policy. And if we're able to roll it out, it's going to save a lot of money for government because the manual system, who does manual this time? You have to be writing, it's gone. And we have to see how we can sustain it. And then the famous e-levy, which led to people fighting in parliament. We all saw it in 2022. Now let's look at 2023. And here, I must say that IMF had an input in this area. 2023, 2024. You realize that IMF was of the view that your total taxes that you collect over the years, there's a minimum threshold globally that you have to meet, that everybody can judge that you were on developmental project, trajectory. We were not there. The maximum we had achieved was 13.7 tax to GDP ratio. So IMF said that before I can help you out from this mess, you need to promise that you are going to do something about your weak tax system. In fact, if you read their report, they said one of our major problems was our weak tax system. So what do? You need to go with a very robust tax, revenue measure. And that is where we went. So 2023 was full of taxes. Full of taxes, if you read the budget. So we came out with minimum chargeable income. Companies who make losses, some people make losses. If you make losses continuously for 5 years, we will notice that your loss is more like artificial. So we will still tax you a minimum tax based on your revenue. We introduced 10% on the lottery. The thing that we repealed in 2017, we brought it back. We also saw the way the people who bet started crying. And then operators, those who do, the operating companies like Betway and all those people, they were also made to pay 20% on their gross revenue. And then a lot of changes also came. And even withholding tax on capital gains. This time, if I buy your land, let's assume that I buy your land and I'm a business, I have to withhold 3% from your money. Those days it wasn't there. You were supposed to walk to the JR office and then go and pay. So many changes came. And for example, benefit in kind vehicle that we used to tax people around 500, we took it up to 1,500. So all of these things we saw it in 2023, all in an attempt to impress the IMF that we are capable of doing. Let's continue and look at the indirect tax aspect. Here too we saw the VAT.
One more question before. If we can go back, I don't know if they can just take us back. The 2023 direct taxes. So most of the things that were cancelled, among the 17 infamous taxes that were cancelled in 2017, were coming back.
Yes.
But before this one, would you say or have concluded that the taxes that had been introduced, not the ones reintroduced, had been introduced before IMF came in, and then we tried to impress the IMF with all of these taxes that were coming back? Were the taxes that were being put up innovative enough?
I think they were mostly influenced by the COVID that we also experienced. So you see, government, of course, we all know that it's impacted the nation to the extent, maybe we can debate that one later. But I think that our finances were in very weak position. So government thought that we should find a way of
more revenue.
Exactly. So COVID levy came. We also saw the 1% pollution.
Yes.
And it also came just to get some money for government.
Okay.
And they were all in the form of indirect taxes. Maybe at that point we would have also looked at the direct tax aspect, but we didn't do much on the direct tax aspect, at least. Yes, we noticed that the minimum chargeable income came in 2023, but between 2021 and 2022, we didn't do much of that.
Okay, so we can now go to the 2023 indirect taxes,
yes.
And let's get back to you.
Here, we saw the VAT being increased from 12.5 to 15. That was a big, big problem. And businesses started crying. Excise duty had several rates being increased more than 100%. For example, water was moved from, mineral water was moved from 17.5% to 20%. Take cigarettes, akpeteshin, spirits, from 25% to 50%.
And then the popular emission levy.
The emission levy. And the emission levy, the reason why people are against it is because in 2021, we started paying 10 pesos on every liter. If you really want to control emission, then that is the best approach to use. The more I drive, the more I pollute the environment. And the more I drive, the more I buy fuel. Now you have introduced the 10 pesos per liter. Then you come back and say, okay, I'm coming to introduce it again on the engine capacity. So people thought that you are doing double taxation on the same item. Again, where is the money going to? In South Africa, when you are buying a car, they calculate or they examine the CO2 component that you are going to emit into the environment. Then they make you pay based on on the car. Here we are doing double. So people think that even on the engine capacity, you are really not controlling the environment, and therefore it is a revenue measure. You are just taking advantage of the climate change noise, and then be raising revenue. So this is where the problem started, and it keeps on going on and going. So you see, I think that the business community believe that they have been overtaxed. In fact, if you go to the next slide, there are other petroleum taxes that you can even mention. Look at the 20 pesos energy sector recovery levy, the sanitation levy, which I've mentioned, the 18 pesos on the LPG, the increase in and in fact, these were even existing. So we have just increased them like that. So all of these things are indirect taxes, and people believe that it is getting too much. Growth and sustainability levy has been there since. Every time we get the notice that it's going to be scrapped, they were temporary measure. We used to call it National Fiscal Stabilization Levy. So we thought that when the fiscal affairs of the country has been stabilized, we will take it off. But it's been extended. So businesses believe that, look, it is not something that is going on. And government continues to look for avenues to raise more money. So in a nutshell, we can say that these taxes have, in the past, between 2017 to 2020, we saw some exemptions, which were good. The impact on businesses were good. They were targeted. The VAT exemptions and all those things for locally manufactured textiles, and they were good. But from 2021 coming down, the indirect taxes have been massive.
I don't know if you are summarizing, if you are ending, but the summary of it is that the business community, which some of us will call the engine of our economic growth, thinks that they are being overburdened. Is that the case?
That is the case. And indeed, the reason why they are believing so is that if you give them indirect tax, they have to pass it on to the consumer. Now, if the consumer has been hard-pressed because of the economic conditions, they take into consideration their interest rate they are paying, inflation and all those things. At the end of the day, they are unable to increase their prices the way they want. So the end where you want to push it to is choked. If it is choked, what happens? The business must have to absorb it. If the business is absorbing it, they are considering other factors. So they put everything together and they think that it is enough.
I want to pick a quick break, just a 1 minute break. Unfortunately, my time is even virtually up. But I'll come back to ask you just one question. What is the way forward? And before you do that, I'll also ask you about the issues of some multinationals relocating because they want eased up environments to place their headquarters because of taxes. We can talk about some of the big multinationals in the US and in other countries who have their head offices at places where taxes are low and all that. What is the case here in Ghana? And then what is the way forward? That would be my major question to you. And we round up. I see lots of messages coming up, but my good friend Abbas Muhammad, the Minister of Agric, how are you? I hope you're doing well. You say you were watching us. But let me pick this quick one. When I come back and I have time, I'll ask him the question, then we'll round up. Right, welcome back from the break. We still have the privilege of having Counsel Francis Timor Boy, who is a tax analyst and a member of the Chartered Institute of Taxation. Our time is up, but I'll try and do this. I had a question for him. Unfortunately, but let me do this. This is a very interesting one. Just one or two messages, then I'll come to him. Good evening, Kwesi. Is it not possible that our GDP calculations are not real? That's why our tax to GDP ratio is high. Could it not also be that we have given so much tax exemption to companies who should have been paying tax to close the ratio? Some, East Legon Hills. And then this one, very educative, thank you. With the carbon emissions task, they should start from the power production companies, then the galamsey machines, then to ships and fishing boats, then to airplanes, outboard motors to the corn mills, bicycle motors. The scientists who discovered COVID and climate change are not making money like the politicians. Adam from Boko says so. Dear Metro TV, the tax education session is great. Learned a lot and would like to be able to learn more from it. Please kindly share the slides used for the session. I will greatly appreciate. Tomorrow there will be a repeat in the afternoon. Please make a date on Metro TV and you'll still be able to follow it up. So, Prof, let me come back to you. And I asked, the first question was the multinationals leaving. If it's the case, what will be the impact? And then entirely and generally, what is the way forward for us as a country? Unfortunately, we have just a minute to round up.
So I think the multinational matter is true. Mm-hmm. Many people are going outside Ghana. Mm-hmm. They produce and they still be able to import into the country at a cheaper price. If you're not careful, they will even come in the form of smuggle. So we really need to look at their concerns and address them. The way forward, I believe that IMF gave us the concerns that we have to take medium to long term. Looks like we've done so many at a very short term. 2023, too many taxes. 2024, we are seeing more. I would wish that if government can, let's go back to IMF to renegotiate some of their revenue measures. Mm-hmm. Argentina here, they are going back to renegotiate some of the conditions. Let's renegotiate, have a little breathing space. Otherwise, by the time the program goes off, we've killed all the businesses. Mm-hmm. Yes, we've not been able to come up and say this business A, B, C, D are relocating, but the truth is that it's affecting them. And for the business community, I think that if government is unable to do anything at all, you have to, see how you can cut down your expenses. Otherwise, you will also close down.
If you're a business community or a member of the community, AGI, Private Enterprises Federation, Employers Association, work on cutting down your expenditure as well. Francis Timor Boy, Esquire, is a tax analyst, member of the Chartered Institute of Taxation. Francis, thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's been very exciting and educative as well. We'll try to reach out to you if we can get you in this week or subsequent weeks to get into further details and further discussions. My name is Kwesi Afriye. This has been the Bottom Line. You can still follow it up tomorrow in the afternoon, also on Metro TV, on DSTV, and all our social media channels. Good evening. Thank you very much for staying with us tonight.